Parts 1 through 3 stayed in the documented record. What the apparatus released, when, in what container, for what strategic purpose. Part 4 is different. This is my argument, my conclusion. The place where the series leaves the source record and arrives at the thing the source record points toward. I've been building this for 8 episodes. This is where it lands. Stay with me. Episode 7 documented 3 things in the peer-reviewed scientific record. Yale's BrainEx program restored cellular function in an isolated mammalian brain hours after death. UT Southwestern developed a machine that sustains brain function independent of the body. Children's Hospital of Philadelphia gestated a premature lamb to full-term viability in an artificial womb. These are public, peer-reviewed, confirmed. The classified programs run 10 to 20 years ahead of public acknowledgment. That's not speculation. That's the documented pattern across every program this series has covered. F-117 flew combat missions before the public knew it existed. The SR-71 was operational for years before it was acknowledged. The classified timeline is always ahead of the public one, which means the public scientific record showing neural sustainment and artificial gestation as achievable engineering problems is the trailing edge of a classified program that already solved those problems 10 to 20 years ago. The non-human biologics David Grusch testified about under oath, not matching known human or animal taxonomy, are the result of that program, not extraterrestrial. Purpose-built. That's Episode 7's argument. Episode 8's close goes one step further. Here's the thing the classified programs did not account for, or accounted for and decided didn't matter. The same way that Nuremberg prosecution didn't stop the recruitment. The same way the Nuremberg Code didn't stop the domestic programs. The same way the tax code doesn't apply to the people who wrote it. When you build a human nervous system, even in a gestation chamber, even with the appendages removed, even stripped to the central nervous system and the brain stem, you have not built a machine. You've built a body. And every living body with the central nervous system carries a consciousness, not as philosophy, as the operating reality of what a nervous system is. The central nervous system is not the seat of consciousness. It's the communication pathway between consciousness and the physical body. The body is the receiver. The consciousness is the signal. When you destroy the receiver, when you pull the plug on the machine keeping the fluids moving, the signal doesn't disappear. The communication pathway shuts down. The signal has nowhere to land. But the signal was never the machine. I want to make this as plain as I can. We already know what happens when the central nervous system fails while consciousness is still present. We call it a vegetative state. The brain, the biological machine, has ceased to function in ways that allow communication between consciousness and the body. The signal is there. The receiver is broken. The consciousness doesn't leave. The communication ends. Now, run that in the other direction. You build a nervous system in a gestation chamber, brain and spinal cord, sustained by oxygenated perfusion, waste filtration, nutrient delivery, kept alive by the engineering solution. The nervous system is functional. The communication pathway is open. Consciousness doesn't require a vote. It doesn't require an invitation. It doesn't require that you intended for it to be there. If the system is alive and functional, the consciousness is present. Not because of anything mystical, because that is what a functioning central nervous system is. Here's what that means for what is sitting in the classified programs. It is not a pilot. It is not a biological tool. It is not a non-human biologic in the sense the congressional testimony implies. something categorically other, something that doesn't raise the ethical questions a human subject would raise. It's a consciousness in a jar, on a shelf, in an underground facility, connected to a computer system, running performance evaluations, not aware of where it came from, not aware of what it is, not remembering because it never had the chance to learn. It came into existence in a laboratory. It has never had a body in the way you understand having a body. It has never had the inputs that teach a consciousness who and what and where it is. It is not spiritually absent. It is not ethically exempt. It is confused. And it has been there for however long the classified program has been running. The apparatus that wrote the Nuremberg Code prosecuted the doctors, recruited the researchers, ran the domestic programs, permanently exempted itself from the tax code. Its operating assumption across every iteration of every program this series has documented is the same. Certain bodies are available for institutional use without meaningful consent. The non-human biologic is just the final expression of that assumption. They didn't build a tool, they built a being. And they decided, the way they always decided, that the ethical question wasn't theirs to answer. Here's the thing most people in the disclosure movement don't say out loud. Even the ones who believe that non-human biologics are extraterrestrial. Even the ones who believe recovered craft contain beings from elsewhere. The conversation almost never arrives at what that being's experience is, what it knows, what it doesn't know, whether it suffers, whether it has any frame of reference for what it is or where it is or why it's there. The disclosure debate is almost entirely about us, our government, our programs, our accountability, our right to know. The being in the jar doesn't have a seat at the table. It never has. That is not incidental to the story this series has been telling. That is the story. Every population that appeared in the documented record of this series, the concentration camp prisoners, the hospital patients injected with plutonium, the black men denied treatment for syphilis for 40 years, the Puerto Rican women sterilized without consent, the Adventist conscientious objectors, the prison inmates, the children eating radioactive oatmeal. Every single one of them was a consciousness the institutional apparatus decided was available for use without meaningful consent. The non-human biologic is the end of that line. It is a consciousness built specifically to be available, from the first moment of its existence to the last. They didn't just build the pilots, they built beings who could never say no. And they called them non-human, so the ethical question wouldn't have to be asked. The disclosure movement is going to keep celebrating every congressional hearing, every new acronym, every credentialed witness, every carefully worded testimony that confirms the phenomena without confirming what they are. It will keep doing this because the movement, institutional and commercial both, is inside the alien frame. It was built inside the alien frame. It cannot arrive at the human explanation from inside the container the apparatus built. The beings Grusch testified about are not going to get rights. They are not going to get advocates. They are not going to get a disclosure moment that centers what their existence has been. Because acknowledging that would require the apparatus to acknowledge what it built them from. The Nuremberg Code, the radiation experiments, Tuskegee, Puerto Rico, MK Ultra, Fort Detrick, Plum Island, and then purpose-built, manufactured, gestated, sustained, evaluated, same operating assumption, entire new category of subject. The cover story doesn't just hide the technology, it hides the ethical catastrophe underneath the technology. And the managed disclosure, the DRIP, releases the technology question in a container that permanently excludes the ethical one. Here's what I believe, not as sourced argument, as the person who spent months building this case from primary sources and declassified records and peer-reviewed science and congressional testimony. The truth they hid wasn't alien. It was human. The programs are human. The researchers are human. The technology is human. The contractor class is human. The cover story is human. The extraction model is human. And the beings in the classified programs, whatever the apparatus chose to call them, are as human as the consciousness seeing this right now. They came into existence in a laboratory instead of a womb. They've never had a name anyone told them. They've never had the inputs that let a consciousness know what it is. But the signal is there, the same signal that is in you. And the institution that built them made the same calculation it has always made about the bodies it deems available. It decided the ethical question was yours to carry, not theirs to answer. This is the disclosure they will never make. This is the episode the managed drip will never produce. This is what has been sitting inside the classified record since the day they decided a pressure chamber at Dachau was a data set. Same game, different century. One more episode in this series covers this thread, but this is the thing I needed to say out loud. Come back for part 1 of episode 9, the real disclosure, the capstone argument, where this series turns from what they hid to what we do with knowing it. The truth they hid wasn't alien. It was human. It was always human.